G'day and welcome to Gardening Australia. Canberra is known as our seat of government, but it's also renowned for its grand tree-lined boulevards, open public spaces and gardens. And this week, I'm at one of its finest private gardens, and I can't wait to show you around. But first, here's what we've elected to show you on this week's show.
Time for a tidy up. I've got some strappy leaf plants that are looking rather daggy, so I'm going to give them a radical haircut.
I'm planting a green manure crop to give a depleted soil back its mojo.
If you're looking forward to making some homemade soup or some fresh salad over the colder months, I've got just the thing for you.
There's nothing quite like a palm for adding a tropical flourish to a garden. There's over 2,500 species of palms worldwide, and they grow in a huge range of different habitats. Ben Smith is a second-generation palm grower in Pallara, about half an hour's drive from Brisbane.
Well, Jerry, I'm passionate about palms. I have a good palm collection myself, so yes, I love to see people plant palms, and I like to see them plant the right ones and something a bit different. So an important question for people to ask themselves when they're purchasing their plants is what they want their palm to do.
Many people want a palm that'll really stand out, and they're great when used as a feature.
Palms like Bismarckias and foxtails are well known for that, but they're huge palms and they're not good for a small 400-metre block. Plants I'd recommend instead for feature-type spots, something like the one behind us here. So this is Licuala grandis, a nice palm from Southeast Asia, nice fan-style plant. Will never get bigger than about 2, maybe 3 metres, and that'll take 30 years. So
great
really
for
nice
the tropics and the subtropics?
Certainly is, yep. As long as you've got a nice shady spot anywhere from Brisbane north, you shouldn't have a problem growing this particular plant. This is a relative of the beetle nut palm, so Areca vestiaria we call it, or an orange collar palm. As you can see, really nice colourful stems on it there. Yep. Good substitute for the lipstick or the sealing wax palm, which is very, very tropical in its requirements and will not grow in the subtropical regions of Australia.
But it's one of those palms that everybody sees growing abroad and they want to have one at home.
Everybody loves a lipstick palm. If we could grow them here, you would see them everywhere, but it's really not possible. So try this one instead.
Nothing says tropical more than when palms are used to create a graceful canopy.
So these are the palms that grow in full sun that will produce nice shade for your delicate understory type plants. There's a few palms which we would suggest over others. The good thing about these is they won't grow to 10 or 15 metres tall. They will stay around the 5-metre mark, most of them very hardy. So my first pick, and probably my best, is Kentiopsis oliviformis. So that's its botanical name, no common name to my knowledge. This plant originates from New Caledonia. It's really, really versatile though. This plant will grow in any capital city in Australia, Darwin down to Hobart and Melbourne. Really, really tough, no fuss, beautiful palm. The next one I would suggest is actually an Australian native palm. So some people may be familiar with this plant. Commonly we call it a solitaire palm, Tychosperma elegans. Full sun, probably requires a little bit more water than the palm behind us here, and probably not going to be that happy growing in Hobart and Melbourne.
You can create your own garden sanctuary by using palms for screening and privacy. Very few people look beyond the golden cane palm. Now, there are many more interesting palms which are almost as useful, aren't there?
There certainly are. If you want screening, you still don't need a really large palm. Some of the better examples for that are the palm along the back here, so this palm here, commonly called a New Guinea cluster palm. Botanically, it's a Tychosperma microcarpum. Great palm, roughly to about 5 metres tall, very upright, so it doesn't splay out a long way.
Really good for a small space.
Any garden bed, half a metre or so, preferably a little bit more in width, and you'll grow this quite happily and you'll block out your 2-storey neighbour with it. This plant here is a relative of the golden cane. Commonly we call it a miniature golden cane. Dipsis baronii is the name of this palm here. Really nice, skinny, sometimes colourful stems. This palm can display red and orange on the stem at different times of the year. It's really only going to grow to about 3.5 metres, but it's quite fast and very tough. Full sun, minimal water, so a miniature version of a golden cane, essentially.
Perfect. But what if you'd really like a palm, but only have a spot that's in deep shade?
This particular one here is Chamaedorea brachypoda. That little fella there, love a full shade spot, maximum size of about 1 metre. This is a little bit more upright plant than what you've got in your hand there. Chamaedorea alternans, juvenile leaf is nice and full, and the adult leaf starts to split a little bit. So this is a bit taller. This will grow to, 2, maybe 3 metres tall, but still needs a nice shady spot, and definitely not happy in the sun.
So there you go. With a little research, a little bit of planning, and some advice from an expert, there's definitely a palm for every garden.
Should you add worms to a new compost heap? Well, in theory, if you build it, they should come, particularly if you've got the compost sitting on the bare ground. If you've got the right materials, organic matter, moisture and air, then all of that biology that does the decomposing, worms included, will find their way into the pile. If you do build your compost in something like a tumbler system, which is disconnected from the soil, it's well worth giving it a hand by adding some old compost. So a scoop of old compost, it'll contain worm eggs, it'll contain fungi, it'll contain bacteria, and they'll help get the process started. So no to worms, but yes to a little bit of compost in your compost.
What's the best mulch to use? Well, to be honest, it's all horses for courses. Rocks and bark work really well in the ornamental garden, whereas straw and compost work well in the edible garden. My advice would be, always mulch. It's nature's blanket. It protects your ground, so therefore your plants do better. And always use mulch that's locally available.
Is it worth paying more for premium quality potting mix? Well, I certainly think so, because on the bags you'll find the Australian Standards 5 ticks. It indicates that it's good premium quality because it's got good aeration, the potting mix is well drained, it still has water holding capacity, and it's got fertiliser that will last at least 1 to 3 months. The old adage, you get what you pay for.
If you look hard enough, there's always room for more plants. For example, in this corner of my veggie garden, alongside these compost cones and this new little bit of paving that I've put in to make accessing the bins easier, is this narrow strip, which is ideal for running plants that can otherwise get out of control in your main garden beds. And this is what I've got. Yarrow, the foliage is a great compost activator, but also the flowers will attract beneficial insects, which is great for my veggies. Also golden oregano, a lovely herb, and thyme. Again, edible, but the flowers will also attract beneficial insects. Now, I've already improved the soil along this area with compost and organic fertiliser, so it's time to plant. There we go. Now these ones are for further down the path. Alongside my chook pen, under these nesting boxes, is quite shady, so I'm choosing some shade-tolerant running and clumping plants. This one's comfrey. Again, the leaves are a great compost activator, but also the chooks like to peck on the leaves, so it'll sort of poke through here and they can self-serve. I'll plant a strip along there. Down at the end, this one, Vietnamese mint, a wonderful culinary herb, but it can really get out of control in your main garden beds. It'll be quite safe there. And where space is particularly tight, along here, Corsican mint. As it grows and spreads, and if you walk along it, it smells terrific, but also when it flowers, it attracts beneficial insects. Well, there you go. There's some useful plants to safely put your tight spaces to work. Stanthra, Asperloides, scarlet mint bush, Acacia, Carpa brutus. Whoa. This Aeromophila. Oh, I gotta tell you, this is a pretty impressive garden. Have a look at the list of plants that have been used in here. Acacia cognata, Acacia craspedacarpa, Acacia cultriformis, knife leaf wattle. I mean, I need some help. Seriously. You right, guys? All right.
Acacia doratoxel, Acacia tubosa. You get the idea. This place is chockers. This garden of just under a hectare in the Canberra suburb of Red Hill is a triumph of planning and planting. It's a garden that bears the stamp of its owners, Ben and Ros Walcott. So much so that the garden has literally ended up on a stamp.
So, Costa, it was a great honor to have a picture of this garden on a 70-cent stamp. But of course, the day after it was issued, Open Gardens closed. And then very shortly, of course, the stamp went to $1. So it became soon obsolete.
So much for snail mail. A former diplomatic residence, the property was purchased by the couple in 2001, and they immediately set to work on it.
Well, when we first came here and saw it, there was an open meadow filled with pampas grass, oleander. There was a big cotoneaster hedge along the front, and there were weed trees everywhere. And so it was really an opportunity to develop something new and different and do it all at once.
And so they did, remodelling both the house and the garden simultaneously. A massive project, which to my surprise took only 9 months to complete. And in the end, allowed them to create the garden they wanted.
We did not want a formal garden. It's this balance between formality and informality. We wanted to attract wildlife, birds particularly. We wanted it to be more of a stroll garden, a garden you moved through, and it had different regions, but they weren't rooms, and they all melded.
Well, if that isn't a good enough reason to go for a walk, I don't know what is. So strike up the band and let's be at it.
This is an interesting callistemon on your left.
And the grey, like red grey. It's a great mix. I'm a fan of bridges.
Well, you're standing on a bridge over troubled waters.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Much larger landscape. I feel like I'm naturally.
And one of the most impressive features of the garden is the creative use of water.
When we built this house and designed it in 2002, rainwater tanks in Canberra were illegal, if you can imagine such a thing. And so we created the bottom pond, which is scooped out of the natural clay and is planted with native reeds and a certain number of native water lilies. So they're all native plants down there. And the water is then pumped up to the top where it flows over the waterfall and into the brook and through the reed bed. So it gets aerated and filtered, as well as being very aesthetic. And of course, on a hot summer's day, hearing the water run is very relaxing and very pleasant.
While Ben's got a keen eye for design, Ros is ferociously focused on the plants. So I wanted to know what were some of her favourites.
As a bee, I couldn't resist this.
No, it's a wonderful plant. This is Pandaria pandarana lemon bells. And it's a wonga wonga vine. And it's lovely and dense. Sometimes we have fairy wrens nesting in this part here because they like the cover. So it's a marvellous plant.
This explosion of colour, you just see this from miles away.
Yes. This is Pristanthera incisor, a mint bush with the wonderful aromatic foliage. And as you can see, the hoverflies are going nuts.
The foliage is actually shaking. There's so many hoverflies and bees in here.
Yeah. I always say in winter, why do I have so many mint bushes? And then in spring, when they bloom, I say, I remember why I have so many mint bushes.
Note to self.
Yep.
For a grevillea, this is looking remarkably like a holly bush.
Yes, it is sometimes called the holly grevillea. It's Grevillea insignis, or wax grevillea.
Wow.
And it's incredibly prickly, and it does have a holly-like leaf.
Yeah, super spiky. But then you look at the flower and it's so delicate.
It's beautiful. The colour is beautiful. The contrast is beautiful between the blue, green and the pink.
When it comes to keeping records, I've never seen anyone as dedicated as Ros. This would have to be the most comprehensive garden plant journal I've ever seen.
It's my magnum opus. When I went to America, I did a PhD in information science, and that training has stood me in good stead for documenting everything.
How many plants have you put into the
Well,
garden?
there's about 850 species in there. I mean, we have about 5,000 at the moment, but I reckon we've tried about 8,000 over the years.
There was also one special plant in the garden that a very proud Ben was keen to show me.
So, Costa, I want to show you, this is an Aromophila. It's Aromophila ras, and it was produced by a friend of ours who took seed off one of our Aromophilas racemosas and grew up a bunch of seedlings and selected this particular one, and he named it after ras. So it is a hybrid, it is unique, and doing very well.
Well,
so,
that's pretty special, because I reckon every gardener out there would be pretty chuffed to have a plant named after them.
yes, I think they would, and it's well-deserved.
What do you love about the Australian plants?
I like the fact that they're so new. They haven't had 1,000 years of horticulture behind them. They've just come out of the bush, and so you have a chance to see which ones will go and in which areas, and it's experimental. It's experimental gardening, really.
This garden is testament to Ros and Ben's commitment to Australian native plants, and most importantly, their unrelenting work ethic. So if you follow their example, you too can put a stamp on your garden.
Time for a tidy up. I've got some strappy leaf plants that are looking rather daggy, so I'm going to give them a radical haircut. This particular one is Dianella Little Jess. I love the variety because of its dark green foliage and beautiful blue flowers, but every 3 or 4 years in the home garden, I'd give it a clean-up. I'm going to use sharp head shears, but commercially, they'd use a whippersnipper with a metal blade. Don't be tempted to use a powered trimmer like this, because it will rip the ends of the leaves and they'll look awful. I'm going to cut them down to 10 to 15 centimetres off the ground. If you cut them too low, there is a chance that the plant won't recover. The ideal time to do this is in spring or autumn. My Lomandra tunica are also not looking the best, and I'm going to treat them the same as the Dianella. The next strappy leaf plant is the winter flowering iris. You cut them back with the first autumn rains to about 10 centimetres high, and this means that their low-growing flowers, which are usually hidden amongst their foliage, are more prominent. Now to Nephophias, or red hot pokers. There are many different types and they flower at different times of the year. This one's looking fabulous, so I'm not going to touch it. However, this one's already finished flowering, and I'm going to cut it down to just above ground level. Cutting all the old foliage off will stimulate new growth, and this will set off the next crop of flowers beautifully. A big part of cleaning up these strappy leaf plants is actually picking up your prunings, but they don't have to be destined for the compost or the green waste bin. They can actually be used as a resource to make a really strong string or rope. You can use this for practical purposes like tying up your plants, or you can actually weave it into something more ornamental, like this basket.
Now, if you're feeling a bit tired and run down, I can't help you. But if your soil's that way, I can. The answer is green manure. It's a crop that you grow just to dig back into your soil, to make it better. First off, I'm loosening the soil by forking it over and breaking up the clods. After growing a demanding crop like brassicas, green manure can remediate soil that's tired and depleted, or it can ready the soil for a hungry crop next season, something like corn, for example. What to plant? Well, technically, you can use any seed that'll germinate at the time of the year that you're planting. But I'm using a store-bought green manure mix. It contains oats, which are great for overcrowding any weeds that may germinate in your bed. Also, their fibrous roots are really good at breaking up soil. It also contains peas and beans, which are legumes, so they'll raise the nitrogen level in your soil. I'm also sowing mustard seed. When dug in, the mustard plants break down and fumigate the soil, helping to prevent things like root knot nematode and fungal pathogens. I'm broadcasting the seed and I'm being very generous, so I get a good, thick coverage. Green manure also improves soil structure, water retention, and it draws minerals up through the soil profile, making them more available to plants. Now, because green manure and bird seed look very similar, and I don't want to be feeding the local bird life, it's a good idea to either rake in your seed to cover it over, but what I like to do is get a bit of compost and just dust it over the seed to cover them. And lastly, make sure that your green manure crop is well watered in. And in about 6 weeks' time, it should be ready to be cut down and dug in. It's a good idea to cut down your green manure crop before it starts flowering. Otherwise, it'll start using valuable nutrients. And get to your peas and beans before they form a woody stem, because that'll take ages to break down. About a week after digging in your green manure crop, I like to dig it in again. And about a week or two after that, your ground should be ready to plant your veggie crop in. And your soil will have its vim, vitality, vigour and vavoom back again.
The colder months are just around the corner, and I've got a great project for you. If on a cold morning all you feel like doing is poking your head out the back door and quickly picking some fresh herbs or vegetables. I'm going to plant up 2 pots, one for soup and one for salads. And these will be terrific because they're plastic pots and they will be easy to move around. Vegetables have to have a site that's got maximum sun, and that's really important, just to move them where there's a nice sunny spot. The vegetables and herbs are hungry creatures and there's plenty of good fertiliser in there. First, the soup pot. And here are the kind of vegetables that I'd put in there. Celeriac. You can grow it for the leafy green stuff at the top. Absolutely beautiful. But it does have a big tuberous-like root, and that can be grated also. Very good for you. Celery leaf is a different one again. A nice flavour. Just a leafy little thing that will grow very easily. This one is an unusual one. Now, if you're in a frosty area, it's no good for you. It's called the mushroom plant. And the lovely leaf is very fleshy and it's got a definite mushroom flavour. So that you could grow in the tropics or semi-tropics, but anywhere it gets too cold, you'll find that it will die back. And last but not least, I've only just come to this. This is kale. It wasn't my favourite kind of thing, but it's become one because if you grow it and pick the leaves when they're really young and tender, it makes all the difference. If you leave them too old, they really become tough like gumboots. No good at all. But kale is a really beautiful plant, very health-giving. That's a great selection of plants, and this pot is just too small for all of them. So I'm going to make a selection that I reckon will look good together. And now for the salad bowl. There's so many vegetables and herbs that you could choose from. I love this one. Look at the colour of that foliage. It's a spinach, the Japanese red. Once again, a leafy vegetable that grows very, very quickly. And now the lettuce. There's lots of different varieties of lettuce. This is the oak leaf lettuce. It's a cut and come again one. Just pick a few leaves and it'll keep shooting up. Give it plenty of nitrogen fertiliser and away it goes. Everyone knows how versatile and how easy the spring onions are to grow. Love to grow those as a border or in pots. And then this one is different. This is a chicory, a mild, sort of spicy leaf, and it's a beauty. It used to be used for the flowers and the roots in making substitute for coffee, but it's the leaves that we're growing for now. Chicory is a good one to grow in a pot. Once you've finished planting, make sure you do this. 3 sharp taps really settles the potting mix around the roots. Does no end of good. Give them a good watering in and do that every couple of days, and you'll find that in no time at all, you will be picking things from your soup pot and your salad pot. Why not give it a go? It just takes half an hour of your time at the weekend, and it's so satisfying.
Well, that's all we've got time for this week, but I reckon it was a pretty good show. What do you guys think? Oh, I loved it. I just dig all those natives. And I reckon next week's show will be just as good.
Would you feast your eyes on these beauties? They're members of the Proteaceae family, and I'm going to be showing you more of them later in the program.
Have you ever stopped to consider how beautiful the bark of some trees can be? Well, I'll be showing you 3 of my favourites.
And while plant growth might slow in winter, gardeners get busy, and I've got plenty to do at my place.